Hello everyone, and welcome back to Lesson 1, Intro to AI. Today, we're going to be looking at the history of AI, specifically how its idea first came about, how it has progressed through the decades, and the important researchers and the milestones that have helped to bring AI to where it is today. So let's get right into it. Now, though modern AI seems like a very futuristic concept, the actual idea of artificial intelligence has been around for centuries. A good example of this is the ancient Greek automaton. The word itself means acting of its own will, and it's sort of described a robot that we would think of today. Now, from the 1930s to the 1950s, certain advancements pushed us closer to the prospect of AI. Advancements in neuroscience research helped us to recognize the brain structure as a neural network, or a network of neurons that rely on electrical signals to pass neurotransmitters to each other, which are important chemicals that signified which neurons needed to be turned on and off. Then Norbert Wiener's work in cybernetics described control and stability in electrical networks, like the brain. And Alan Turing's theory of computation demonstrated that any form of computation can be described digitally. And all of these advancements seem to be pushing us to the idea that intelligence isn't just something that humans are born with, but it could also be created artificially through a computer. Now, the earliest substantial work was also done in this field by Alan Turing in the 1950s. Famously, he established the Turing test, which evaluates how a computer demonstrates intelligence compared to a human. And the Dartmouth Workshop of 1956 is often considered the birth of AI, since this is where its name, mission, and first success was officially established. So here we have a general timeline of the different periods in AI. So first off, we have the birth of AI from 1952 to 1956, when again we were conducting this research and coming up with different ideas for AI. Now, AI was officially born with that Dartmouth Workshop in 1956, and from then until 1974, we have symbolic AI. Here, computers were solving algebra word problems, proving theorems in geometry, and learning to speak English, things that people a couple decades before never dreamed could happen. And researchers had an intense optimism in the possibilities of AI. And many different companies and government agencies were pouring money into this field. Now, from 1974 to 1980, we have what we like to call an AI winter. At this point, AI was subject to critiques and financial setbacks because researchers didn't realize how complicated developing AI could really get. And their tremendous optimism had raised expectations very high, but when promised results didn't necessarily materialize, funding started to decrease. But many new ideas were explored in logic programming, common sense reasoning, and many other areas. From 1980 to 1987, we have a boom. And here, a lot more government agencies and other companies started to fund AI again by seeing more and more success as they pushed through that winter. From 1987 to 1993, we again have another winter, because dozens of companies were failing and many people thought that the technology was not viable. But a lot of people were also arguing for an entirely new approach to artificial intelligence. This helped with even more advancements in 1993 through 2011. And a lot of these new discoveries were starting to make their way around the world. And the reputation of AI, though it was less than pristine, all of these factors helped to fragment AI into many competing subfields. And people started to realize that we could also focus on using AI for very specific tasks. And AI was more successful than it had ever been. And then from 2011 onwards, we have deep learning, big data, and general AI. So deep learning is that idea of using artificial neural networks, which seems really interesting, and we're definitely going to be discussing it in the next few videos, as it is very important to how we approach AI moving forward. And we also have the ideas of general AI, where AI is not only customized to solve a specific problem or do some specific task, but the idea of it possibly being able to tackle a wide variety of tasks by thinking complexly like humans. And so now that we have an idea of these general time periods, let's go ahead and take a look at some important firsts on this timeline of AI development. So in 1957, Frank Rosenblatt develops the perceptron, a two-layer artificial neural network. In 1959, the term machine learning is coined by Arthur Samuel. This term is definitely going to pop up a lot more as we discuss AI in these videos, so be on the lookout for that too. In 1965, Joseph Weizenbaum develops ELIZA, the first ever chatbot. And in 1970, the first ever anthropomorphic bot was built in Japan. And this basically means a robot that resembles a human. In 1986, the first driverless car was built in Munich, Germany. In 1997, we had the development of Deep Blue, a chess bot, and it beat the reigning world champion, Garry Kasparov. And it was crazy to think that this bot that was programmed by people who were definitely not as good in chess as Garry Kasparov was able to learn on its own and beat this champion. And this was actually a pretty publicized event. Then in 2000, Google's index of the web reaches 1 billion. In 2006, Geoffrey Hinton publishes a paper on neural networks and identifies new approaches to further deep learning, which was very helpful in bringing deep learning to the point at which it is today. In 2011, a computer called Watson defeats two former Jeopardy champions. And similar to Deep Blue, the chessbot, this was also very, very publicized, and people began to realize how much power AI really had in these specific tasks. In 2014, a driverless car developed by Google passed a driver's test in Nevada. In 2019, the internet reached over 4 billion users. And in 2021, an algorithm developed by UCLA discovered 366 exoplanets in a day, which added to the over 4,000 exoplanets already known, which took researchers years to identify. And who knows where AI can go now? It is limitless, and it has so many different applications, which is why it's important for us to study it and understand it, and also realize how we can use it for good. So let's summarize the lesson. Concepts and ideas of AI have been around since ancient civilization. But after research in the 1950s, we finally realized how we can implement AI, and so modern AI was born. And after decades of research and work, we are today in a new and ever-changing period of AI research. AI is finding its ways into our homes, our industries, and so many more applications that many researchers never even thought of before. And so that's why it's really important to learn about AI and consider ways that it can expand in the future. So, thank you so much for watching. I hope that you enjoyed this video, and next up we have Lesson 1, Video 3, where we're going to go deeper into the different types of AI and categorize a lot of the discoveries that we talked about today. So, I'll see you in the next one. Bye!